I'm continuing my series of Master Retro reviews with Season 3, Episode 2, Rainbow Bridge. So the premise of this episode is Hawkeye and Trapper are getting ready to go off to Tokyo for some R&R. They're getting ready, packing their bags. Characters are giving them shopping lists of things to buy and pick up and bring back to the camp for them. And then Raider comes in and to inform them, well, mainly Henry, but that there's a load of plasma coming in, and Hawkeye and Trapper are like, okay, great, because that means they're going to get wounded and they won't be able to go on Well, after being in surgery for over 36 hours, I believe, handling nearly 500 cases, teaching Frank how to do triage because, he's prioritizing Americans with minor, very survivable injuries over, enemy soldiers with life-threatening injuries because, the first thing a doctor's supposed to do is do no harm, and that includes, deliberately letting a more injured patient suffer for longer. Frank can get very GI at times. But anyhow, after all that, they get a message from a Chinese unit, Chinese doctor specifically, saying that they got about 9 American POWs who are wounded that they are willing to hand over so they can get the proper medical care. They hold discussion on what they're going to do. Trapper's all for going. Margaret and Frank are no. Hawkeye comes around, because he's a little leery, but not as opposed as Margaret and Frank. Basically, he's being more with the realistic. Yes, it could be a trap, but the Chinese do treat our wounded pretty well. They know we treat their wounded pretty well, so he's agreeable. And then it comes down to Henry to make the final decision. And Henry is earlier was I don't know, whatever you guys decide, very much a Henry thing, but eventually decides, yeah, let's do it. He volunteers Radar to be the driver, and they get ready. Klinger also volunteers to come because he says in this episode, well, if he can't get out naturally, he'll try to get out for bravery. But this does bring up an interesting fact about Klinger's character. He's always trying to get out, but he rarely, if ever, shirks his duty. When you really watch all the time, he's only doing his stunts. He may still be wearing women's clothing, but he's not doing any of his stunts, especially the more disruptive stunts, when they're treating wounded. He's always doing his job. And that's probably part of the reason I told him he's not crazy. He's just trying to get out, and he admits it. But the thing is that this does show that he does care. He does do his duty. He just doesn't want to be there. And then, of course, Frank doesn't want to go initially, but Margaret talks him into it and tells him to take a gun. So he takes a very small gun. Probably about the size of this remote when you really think about it. Maybe a little bit bigger. The Master Wiki does state that it's a .25 caliber. It was made in 1909 and it was designed for off-duty police officers so they would have some protection on hand. So that's what it was. But that does play a role later because they take the bus to the meeting point, which is known as Rainbow Bridge, and it's a tense situation. The Chinese have weapons, they don't, because that was part of the agreement. Frank violated that, but anyhow, they're very cautious, walking slowly closer and closer. Frank reveals he has the gun, and that's how Hawkeye and Chopper do not like that, and that makes them even more nervous. And then the doctor gives them some instructions, all that, and Hawkeye comes that the Chinese doctor speaks pretty good English, and it's revealed that he went to the University of Illinois, the same school that Henry went to, which is kind of ironic, but it does make sense. A lot of Chinese professionals before the Chinese Civil War had educations in the States. Sun Yat-sen, I believe, even too. That was way before the Civil War, but still. The point being is that a lot of people were educated in the United States from China. It was a very common thing at one time. Might still be, I'm not quite sure. And actually, it's kind of played more humorously in the episode, but that's a very historical thing. Lots of Chinese professionals did have education in the United States, especially for highly technical stuff like medicine. Because of years of, because of the century of humiliation, European interference, China just did not have the infrastructure, the the Japanese invasion, China just didn't have the infrastructure for highly technical education for things like medicine. So it makes sense that people will go overseas for said education. But anyhow, they give the instruction to the soldiers cock their weapons, because they're soldiers, and that causes Frank to panic and reveal that he has a gun, and basically the Chinese doctor rightfully complains that their medical units are being, harassed. Now, I will say I don't remember the full situation, how well Chinese medical units were marked. We know MASH itself, the 477, had plenty of stories where they were harassed by either enemy or allied hostilities and weapons, so it does happen. And yeah, doctors are rightfully going to be mad about that. And then when Hawkeye in Chapel, first Hawkeye appeals to the Chinese doctor to basically have compassion. You're trying to do this decent thing in a bunch of basically the mess of the war. They convince Frank to show his gun, and the teeny tiny gun, and that causes the Chinese doctor to start laughing. Breaks the tension, and things go normal, and they collect the wounded and head back. And Frank gets to keep the piece. So Margaret, because that was her mother's gun that her mother got from her father, is probably going to be happy that wasn't taken by the Chinese. But the point with that is that humor... No, the Chinese doctor reached out to do the decent thing, and then humor broke the tension. You could tell Hawkeye tried to break the tension in that scene with mentioning that their CEO Henry went to the University of Illinois as well. But it was Frank's gun being so small, not the smallest gun in existence, but definitely really small, is what truly broke the tension, and the humor is what did it. Laughing. Which is, kind of fitting. It's when you laugh with somebody, you generally don't see them as an enemy as much. I'm just going to bring up the Christmas truce in World War I. It only lasted the first year because the generals on both sides prevented it in the following years. But the thing is, the soldiers, mostly the British and the Germans, the French were a little more leery, understandable. It was their land that was being fought on at the time. But they, they hung out, partied, played games and all that. And after the truce ended, and the generals tried to restart hostilities because they never wanted to stop in the first place, they had to remove those soldiers who partook in the Christmas truce, move them to other theaters because they became comrades. They saw the enemy as their friend, not an enemy anymore, and thus it became much harder to fight, and they had to remove. Many German soldiers were sent to the Eastern Front to fight against the Russians, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the Allied soldiers who moved to either other sections of the front line or even other theaters of war, such as the Italian front, and or even the front lines against the Ottomans. But the point being is, when you start laughing, you break down the bonds that make you enemies. You start seeing each other as humans. And there was a line earlier in the episode where Hawkeye notes that the Chinese treat American wounded prisoners better than the North Koreans do, because the Chinese know that the Americans do the same for the Chinese who are wounded and taken into American custody, showing that bit of compassion, that bit of humanity. And then the final tension breaking was not just knowing that, but laughing. Isn't that just what we need? We need a good laugh to break the tension so we can see the humanity in all of us. But those are just my thoughts. Is there more I can discuss? Certainly. But that is what the comment section is for, so let me know your thoughts down there, and I hope to see you next week. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give this video a like and share. Also, consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date on all my latest videos. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the force be with you, always.